Central Summer Time, and it's your time. And try to maintain in the slots in time, because there are many, and there are just an information for you officially in terms that the last presentation is not a poster, but is a normal presentation. There is a mistake in the printing, because it's green, but it's not green. It's the last.
Sorry?
Metcalf Oliver.
Yes, okay. So, but it's 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, here, have you a good section?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So welcome back to all of you. This is the last session, the best one, I'm sure. So we will start now, not to be late, with Jack Greenhalgh from the UK, who is going to talk about pond restoration. Are you in, Jack?
Yes, hello, yeah, I can see my screen, okay.
We see your screen and we can hear you.
Perfect.
Start whenever you like.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, my name is Jack Greenhalgh, and I'm doing a PhD at the University of Bristol, investigating the strange and bizarre underwater acoustic world of ponds and rivers. And I'm going to speak today a little bit about some of my work using ecoacoustics as a novel tool for assessing pond restoration success. But I'm also going to use this fantastic opportunity at this conference to touch on briefly just a little bit of some of my other work on freshwater ecoacoustics. Hopefully this will change the slide.
Maybe you need to click on the arrows. No?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Pressing my down arrow. I think it's quite a big slide file, so it's quite slow. So we know quite a lot already about terrestrial soundscapes, in particular rainforests, and we've heard some fantastic talks, particularly on frogs, and then also in the marine environment, on coral reefs, and also in particular for whale song. And recording whale song did amazing things for whale conservation. So perhaps we could also replicate that for freshwater environments, which I think would be incredibly exciting. But the thing about freshwater environments, in particular their soundscapes, is that we know so little about them. So at the beginning of my PhD, I sought to undertake a systematic review of the freshwater bioacoustics literature. And we investigated 124 research articles. And what we found was that there was this shift, I'm sure everybody is familiar with, the shift away from bioacoustic studies focusing on single species towards studying soundscapes, all the sounds in the environment, and towards the field of ecoacoustics. So this has happened fairly recently. And in fact, the first study of temperate freshwater soundscapes was conducted as recently as 2015, which I think is incredible, so recently. And what we found during the systematic review is that there's a bias towards studying fish sounds, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, fish are great, but I think with freshwater ecosystems in particular, it's actually arthropods, all the aquatic insects, the beetles and the bugs that are contributing most significantly to the freshwater soundscape. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to some members of the band in this underwater chorus. And perhaps the most notable and also the most studied is the water boatman. And that's this guy here, and he's incredibly loud. I mean, Jerome, in fact, published a study a couple of years ago that showed that when scaled to body length, this species of water boatman was capable of producing sound with more acoustic energy than 227 marine and terrestrial mammal species, which is amazing. And this is a recording of one that I made in my bathtub during lockdown. So it has this really eerie sound. which is almost omnipresent in freshwater soundscapes, kind of similar to cicadas in rainforests and snapping shrimp in marine ecosystems. It's always the arthropods that seem to be laying down the baseline in these soundscapes. And this is a spectrogram here of the sounds produced by that water boatman. And also to kind of address this, this imbalance of knowing so little about freshwater insect sounds, as part of my master's, I recorded for the first time the sounds of two water beetle species, the cherrystone water beetle, which sounds like this. And then also the wonderfully named supertramp water beetle. Oops. And we recorded those in a field tank by containing the water beetles in a net so that they then wouldn't create unwanted sound by hitting into the tank walls or into the hydrophone itself. And we were able then to use Raven Pro in order to describe, to give some very basic descriptive statistics of the sounds that are produced by these water beetles. And perhaps in the future, we might then be able to use spectrogram recognition techniques and also AI in order to be able to detect these indicator and very important indicator species in freshwater environments using just the sound. And then once you get an idea of the different components of the freshwater soundscape, you can start to build a picture of what that might look like. So this is the spectrogram of a soundscape recording from Old Sneed Park Pond in Bristol in the southwest of the UK. And you can see here that we have our water boatman sound here that we listened to earlier. We also have these whining, droning sounds made by aquatic plants. I mean, even aquatic plants make sounds when they're respiring in the sun, and you can hear the oxygen bubbles streaming out as they do so, and it's quite incredible. And so this is the soundscape of Old Sneed Park Pond. And even bubbles, methane bubbles popping up from the sediment below, perhaps might be able to give us an indication of the rate of decomposition in the pond. So there's lots of information then you can gain from freshwater environments simply by listening. Now, in the UK, ponds have declined by about 75% in the 20th century. The majority of ponds are located on farmland that is frequently surrounded by intensive arable land, like you can see here in this satellite image of a farm in North Norfolk in the UK. Now, many farmland ponds have been neglected or overgrown. These were old pits that were dug out as sources of clay that people used back in the 18th century even to build houses and to lime the fields. This is long before fertilizers. And so you have these remnants of ponds in the landscape. And we can see just in this small area that there are lots of these potential ponds that have become overgrown, like you can see in the image on the bottom left of the screen, that are just waiting to be restored and come back to life. And Richard Waddingham was a local Norfolk farmer who really, in the area of Norfolk, initially started this movement with the Norfolk Ponds Project to start restoring some of these ponds. So restoring a pond is a very fun and relatively simple process if you have the right tools. So to begin, you let the light in, so you remove some of the trees around the margin of the pond. And then secondly, you remove most of the sediment, and this is resulting mostly from leaf litter. And you remove this sediment and expose the seed bank. And crucially, this seed bank is magic, really. It's black magic containing aquatic plant seeds that have been preserved for many, many years, sometimes up to 150 years, some studies have shown. And you leave that there exposed. And slowly the water will fill in, and over time, these seeds will germinate and the pond will come back to life, rejuvenate all by itself. And the process is very, very fun to do, and it's great fun to watch these ponds come back. But we can listen as well as just watching. So this here is an image of an unmanaged, overgrown pond, and there's just a slither of water there in the top, and it sounds like this. Not much going on at all. And then this is the soundscape of a managed pond, restored back to life. So as you can hear, it's a stark contrast. It's full of life. And we quantified the return of these sounds and the beetles and bugs by counting sound types or unique sounds. And we found that the richness of these sounds, the sound type richness, was much higher in managed ponds than it was in unmanaged ponds. But also the abundance of these sound types, the acoustic activity was much higher in managed ponds. And then ordination of these sound types revealed distinct differences between the unmanaged ponds, represented here in dark blue, and the managed ponds represented in light blue, reflecting the distinct ecological communities that those ponds possess. But interestingly, we also found that the ponds are different from each other. The pond soundscapes are unique in their own right, I think reflecting the individuality of ponds as an ecosystem. But one of the things we didn't really investigate properly or account for in that study was how the soundscapes change over a 24-hour period. So for my PhD, I've been interested in addressing this question for temperate pond habitats. So I looked at 5 temperate ponds, a few in and around Bristol, and one in East Devon in the southwest UK. I recorded these with an SM4 bat connected to an HTI 96 hydrophone. And I monitored continuously for a week, and I sampled between April and June of last year. And the results of this study are as follows, and this is just preliminary data at the moment. I'm still halfway through analyzing some of the other data. But these figures represent a generalized additive model of a 7-day averaged hourly mean. So essentially each line in the figure is an average from 7 days worth of data over a 24-hour period. And we can see that, and this is plotted against the biodiversity index. And it seems that around the solar zenith is the time when these ponds tend to be most acoustically active. And I think that's because there's a mixture of sounds produced by aquatic insects, as well as sounds produced by aquatic plants as the sun is baking down and driving photosynthesis in the pond. But there are some strange peculiarities as well. So with Old Sneed Park Pond, which is in the top left here, you can see that there's, like I said, there's this intense amount of activity during the midday. There's a bit going on in the evenings, but at dawn and dusk, it's relatively quiet. And we're not quite sure why that is, but perhaps it's because fish are hunting at that time and the insects need to be quiet to avoid being eaten up. And then Chew Magna Reservoir, which is the one at the bottom, is incredibly loud at night, but less so during the day. Now, I should mention that you should consider these plots individually rather than comparing them, because the y-axes are different. But the trends, I think, are apparent within each plot individually. And Chew Magna, like I said, has got these incredible intensity of activity at night and then less so in the day. So I think that perhaps is a pond soundscape driven more by aquatic insects than by aquatic plants. And then this is a type of sampling that's focused on gathering temporal coverage over spatial coverage. But I've also been fortunate to be involved in the development of a protocol for rapidly collecting acoustic data in ponds, which is focusing on spatial coverage in favor of temporal coverage. And so we published recently this protocol, a pond acoustic sampling scheme, or PASS as we're calling it, in which you can turn up at your favorite pond with a hydrophone a recorder and some headphones, and record in 10 different microhabitats around the pond for 1 minute, therefore in total gathering 10 minutes worth of data that you can then use to calculate acoustic indices on, to analyze. And when we've done this, we found that there's a gentle positive correlation between biodiversity index and habitat suitability index with some of the ponds that we recorded. But we still need a lot more data to be sure on this. So get involved. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have got recorders and headphones and SD cards and big batteries and all the other equipment that you need, but you might not have a hydrophone. So if you're at all interested in exploring your pond, then I strongly recommend that you buy some of these hydrophones. There's an Aquarian hydrophone that's really good, or a Jez Riley French hydrophone that's as little as $80. If you're interested, then please do get in touch afterwards and I can give you some information. So to summarize, ponds are packed full of biological information, and ecoacoustics can tell us a lot about freshwater habitats and ponds in general. Ecoacoustics can be used to monitor pond restoration success, and that temperate ponds possess very clear and distinct bioacoustic activity cycles. And if you're interested, then please help to contribute to a growing library of freshwater soundscapes and get involved. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jack, for this very nice talk, for this very nice habitat. I really enjoy walking around ponds and trying to listen to insects inside. Questions. I see that Diego has a question. How challenging is it to associate a given sound with the species producing it?
Well, I think it can be fairly challenging, particularly at the moment with the field, and I'm sure, Jerome, you agree, is that we don't really have an established reference library yet of all the different sounds producers in ponds. I have been recording some sounds of species in my bathtub, or I should say in a polystyrene box in my bathtub, just in case it starts leaking. And I found that that's quite an effective way. But you know, how reliable is that really? I mean, you can isolate the species from the environment, but it then might not be making natural sounds. So I think, you know, I think that's probably the best way that we can go about it for now is to take these species out and record them individually, and then slowly build up this catalogue.
Yes, it's true. Larissa asked Jack, how would the underwater physical structures be influencing the detection range of hydrophones? Oof. Tough question.
Let me just try and find it.
Yes, it's Larissa.
Yeah.
Basically, it's about sound detection range of your hydrophones.
Right. Well, so I was recording at 192 kilohertz there, and that's because of the recorder.
No, that's another question. There isn't. Okay.
For the hydrophone, I think it was sensitive up to 40 kilohertz. I think, okay. Plus or minus 1 decibel.
I think that the question more or less is how far do you record with an hydrophone in a pond?
Oh, so how far does the sound come?
Yes.
Yes.
Tough question.
Yeah, no idea. Yeah, no idea.
Yes. Very difficult, but very important question. But very to answer. Luca asks, are there some important species that need unmanaged ponds?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of the philosophy of the Norfolk Ponds project is not to restore everything all at once, and to maintain a range of successional stages in the environment. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any key species, freshwater ones anyway, that would really value unmanaged habitats. But they are good for birds, because obviously there's a lot of tree nesting habitat there for them. So they're absolutely right. They are still important habitats in their own right.
Thank you. Klaus Rieder asks, can you hear the sound outside the pond?
Well, not most sounds, I don't think, but I think there have, I've heard somewhere that you can hear a water boatman when you're standing next to the pond, yeah. Yes, just because they are so incredibly loud.
Yes. Jessica asks, did you notice any effects of pond depths on the underwater soundscape?
Yeah, good question. I didn't measure that in my study, so I wasn't able to account for that. But I'm sure that the depth of the pond would obviously have some effect on the communities there, and also the propagation of the sound. So yes, with the managed ponds that we were recording, they're all very similar in their depth, but yeah, certainly an important variable.
Okay, thank you. Bernie, do you ask? Sorry, I didn't see you. Bernie?
Okay, I'm here now.
Yes.
I have two questions, Jack. First of all, have you ever recorded in air, like toads and frogs, in air and underwater at the same time? And the second part is that we actually were doing pond mitigation in the Sierra Nevada mountains in freshwater ponds in the late 80s and early 90s through the University of California in Santa Cruz. So we have some really good data on that, recording water boatmen and spadefoot toads, the Great Basin spadefoot toad, Spea intermontanus. So, have you ever tried to record both the frog or a toad or a frog in water and in air at the same time? Because it's really fascinating to do that if you haven't done that.
Unfortunately, I haven't done that. That sounds amazing. What I have done is I've experimented with basically a bamboo stick with some coat hangers on it. So I have a hydrophone dripping down from the bamboo, and then some basically some lapel mics onto the coat hangers, and that was really cool to be able to listen to that simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, anyway, try it with some frogs or toads, and you'll get some very interesting data.
Yeah, that sounds like great fun as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
So there are other questions, but I'm afraid the time is over.